And now is the meeting supposed to start at 10? I mean, at 5? Is that,
Yes. Yeah,
yeah,
we have 3
okay,
minutes, and then
all right,
usually people are late,
right,
but yeah, but, it's what it is. You don't wanna start too late because otherwise people just come later and later. So,
right, right,
yeah, wanna start on time.
yeah.
So you're in the same branch with Barbara Nielsen and Philip Cole then?
Yes, that's right, right, yes. But I haven't been as active recently, so, and focusing more on local issues like the recent California law that requires police departments to list all of the military equipment that they have obtained.
Well,
And
that's good.
yeah, that's California law now.
Ah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
I wonder how many states do that.
I don't know. I really don't. Yeah. It's a good
Yeah.
idea because the way the Defense Department has allowed states and county jurisdictions to buy equipment, it seems as though many localities could have really quite sizable uh, list of military equipment that
Yeah.
they choose to use. And so this is a way at getting at what exactly they have and how they plan to use it, the training.
Oh, you do stuff like that, not just
Yeah,
listing the machinery, but training
right,
and stuff like that.
right.
Ah, good. So I know George is here. George, did you just have another meeting? I think last month there was another meeting right before this.
Well, yes, the Congress Planning Committee meets. I didn't go
Oh,
to the meeting, but that meeting was started at 6:15, and it probably would have been over, but I had to do other work too. But Dee made it, so she was there.
uh-huh. Okay. And so you meet regularly, like every Wednesday or something?
I think it's every 2 weeks.
Oh, every 2 weeks? Good. That's a nice amount of time to meet. Not every week is kind of a lot sometimes.
Hi, Diane. It's been a busy Zoom day.
I know. This is my third Zoom with you, Judith. Wow.
We're hanging in there.
Yep, we are. Hi, Cheryl. I see Laura's on here again. So great. Okay, so it's after 8 o'clock. I like to start pretty much promptly on time. I see Kieran Korsh. Good, great. And we're going to start with a commemoration of Nakba because this is the 76th, although some people say it's been a Nakba for 76 years, but it's a 76 remembrance of it. And so, George, are you ready to say something, or did you want me to wait, or what?
Um, I could say a little, but I prefer if Teresa was able to do it, but she's not here yet. I'll give you the
Right.
short version, and if she can come, we can ask her to do the longer version. Um,
Okay.
so May 15th, 1948 is when mostly Palestinian Arabs were violently forced away from all of Palestine. All of Palestine at that point was intended to be repopulated with um, and renamed Israel. That's when Israel was created, 1948. Mostly created by our government with what is now the Israeli government, and it was not a democratic process. It was a violent process, not that different from Crystal Night when, oh, Teresa's here. So maybe we can press her to give us the information on the Nakba. She knows a lot more than I do.
Well, George, it sounded pretty good what you were saying, because yesterday, the 14th, was officially the recognition day for Israel. And I get these little notices saying today in history. And the notice said today that 5 countries attacked Israel today, which is odd because all of us know that today is the day that Israel began the genocide that continues to this very day. And it's just really crazy. But the whole world is watching. And the conference in Detroit, May 24th through 26th, is the People's Conference for Palestine. And that's really important. And I think Hanan of Palestine sectional will maybe going to that and speaking at that. But it's going to be at Cobo Hall in Detroit. And if you know Detroit, that's a big, big venue. And it's going to be packed because lots of people from the region make their home in Michigan, and particularly in the Detroit area. So lots of Palestinians. So I'm just looking forward to the tour, which the Michigan stop of the tour, the UN Decade Reparations organized the South Solidarity Tour, which will feature a student from the University of Michigan, where they've been doing a lot in the way of protests in support of Palestine. So it's just a lot going on, a lot.
Yep. Thank you, both of you, George and Teresa. Dasa, are you there? Could you tell us about the Congress, what's happening? Because you're in charge of the technical stuff. Or who else? I don't see anyone else here to talk to us about the Congress.
We had over 40 speakers, both from our WILP membership and from organizations who are working on water issues, as well as other individuals who we have sought out who are working in specific areas academically and active, also in the activism. Let's see, we have Ellen Schwartz and I yesterday set up the actual Zoom meeting, so that was kind of fun to actually have it start and go and get their Zoom credentials, so to speak. Currently, the program committee and the tech committee are working on emails to go out to our participants and our speakers to get everybody in line, so to speak, ready to walk through that Zoom door.
I wanted to ask Dasa to also speak about the poster rooms that you're working on so that everyone has an opportunity to submit their materials in time.
We'd like to be able to share as many of these activities, and people would be able to pop in and out of different poster sessions, just like, you know, you have an open cascade of breakout rooms. So we would have a breakout room for every single poster session, and we can have these as static pages up during the time that there might be some lag in individuals being able to get into the regular session, because something like a discussion is about to wrap up. And just see a static page, go into a breakout room and look at a graphic, or maybe even a short talk that's playing on a loop.
Dee, did you want to say anything about the Congress that's upcoming? Because I see you're
Sure.
on.
I'm sorry I'm not on camera, everyone. I'm not feeling well today. I don't like to appear on camera when I'm not feeling well, but I just wanted to elaborate a little bit more on what Dasa spoke about regarding poster rooms. So poster rooms are like the virtual version of tabling, where you can come in and you can demonstrate about the work you're doing, whether it's within WILF or in other organizations that are aligned with WILF's values. And you can have demonstrations of everything from short video clips that we can put on a loop for whenever people come into the room. You can actually have posters and contact information and anything that you would like other people to know. So as Sasa mentioned, we will have early bird and late bird sessions, night owl sessions, I guess. And as people, are kind of like hanging around after the Congress, they can go through the different poster rooms and peruse what's on display. So if you'd like to submit any materials that you would like everyone to know about, be informed about your work or anything else that's directly relevant to WILF's work or aligned with it, please go ahead and send either myself or Dasa or Program Chair Nancy Price an email with the materials. And we're working as a closely knit team. So whenever we receive materials in, we share them with each other. But Dasa is the main person that will, of course, be working with Ellen Schwartz to set up these rooms. So she's going to be inundated with a lot. We're compiling them on a program committee. And so therefore, to kind of make her work lighter, if you want to forward it to me or to one of the other members of the Congress Programming Committee, please do so. I will put my email in there. Dasa has hers.
In the chat?
Yeah, in the chat. And Dasa has hers there, and I will put mine and Program Committee Chair Nancy Price and Tina Shelton, who's been of great assistance to us during the structuring of the Congress. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Dee. Does anyone have any questions about this?
Don't know why it's doing this.
The sooner the better, by the way, because the Congress will be in 14 days, so we don't want a lot of them at 3 days before the Congress, because that's a lot for Dasa and Ellen to have to coordinate. So that the sooner you present the materials, the more helpful it is to us. Thank you very much.
I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guest speaker for tonight, Mary Hanson Harrison. She served as WILF U.S. President from 2015 to 2019, WILF U.S. Des Moines Branch President, Congress Coordinator, 2008 Simpson College, and Virtual Congress Coordinator 2021. She sits on the board of Jane Addams Paper Project, Ramapo, I think that's how you say it, Ramapo College, New Jersey. Yeah.
Right.
Mary brings not only an academic career, but also a policy researcher and hands-on activism with and for nonprofit peace, feminist-oriented organizations. She convened and participated in several presentations on ecofeminism and the necessity of a revolution in global agriculture and food systems in The Hague at the UN Commission on the Status of Women and the WILF International Congress in Ghana and past WILF US Congresses. She is a published essayist and translator. She has a degree in history and a master's in literary criticism and theory. Thank you, Mary. Take it away.
Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. I had my hand up. It's nice to see everybody. Or not everybody, but I know you're out there. I was going to ask something, Teresa, maybe you can tell me, did the United Nations pass that partition plan for the Nakba, that precipitated the Nakba, like in 1947? Did they, do I remember that right?
I'm not sure about that, but the official recognition was May 14. I thought it may have been 1947, but uh, it was 48, I think. And then it seemed immediately Israel decided to slaughter everybody and remove everybody. And so the great catastrophe is marked as May 15th, 1948, which is why today is such a big day for the Palestinians and for them to remember May 15th, 1948, the Nakba.
Thanks, Teresa. It's hard to be, shall I say, it's hard to be hopeful, okay, right now. But I did title my talk today. It's as a oasis of hope. And by that, I meant Hull House and the lessons that we learned there. I think it's the idea that they had, in particular, Addams and the women of Hull House, although they had a lot of help, was the ideals that they wanted to be able to work. It wasn't a dream as such. It was hands-on work. And why I also added American pragmatism, which is a philosophical movement that happened around 1870s or so in the United States. It does give us hope because it's a practice. It's not just an ideal, but there's an idea and there's a value system connected with it. I do have a presentation, a retro sort of presentation with a slideshow as such, a PowerPoint. And I do that because I don't know about you, but I was in history, so I get those 600-page books, huge. And what do I look at first? What do I thumb out? I look at the pictures. So this is a very quick glimpse of the evolution and of the causes and what will make wealth today relevant. So I am going to share the screen and start my presentation. So I was explaining why the oasis of hope and why the American pragmatism, and I use American, as I said, because it started around 1870, and I'll explain it a little bit more. And pragmatism, as you may know, the word pragmatic, right? But this is a philosophy that is action oriented and not the priority is the action and not doctrine, right? So that although these are philosophers who started this movement, they depend on experience over the principles that we've heard from Socrates and on ad infinitum. So it's very helpful in some place like the Hull House and Jane Addams. Addams was a philosopher really at heart. So she came into Toynbee Hall in England in the late 1800s and saw how they were treating their immigrants and the problems that they are having, with the Irish in particular coming over. And she learned and picked up the principles that how it is she could make use her money that she has she called it sort of her idea perplexing, and it was perplexed because she was buying this, going to come back and buy this piece of property, the Hull House, and then various land around it. And she's going to start this with some wealthy white women. So her problem right away is, how are we going to belong to the community? How are we going to make a neighborhood? And I will read this sort of what I have here from her main focus on using this, what we call practicism, is that she always emphasizes the moral energy that we need. It's a new sort of force. This was a new way of thinking, because all of this globally was caught in the sort of a zeitgeist of the fin de siècle. The end of the century had one sprouting out ideas, new ways of looking at life globally, all over the world, and she was part of that process. So her admonition to us from the very beginning is we shall have to learn to use moral energy to put a new sort of force into the world, and believe it is a vital thing, the only thing in this moment of sorrow and death and destruction that will heal the world. And we certainly need to do that right now. I do put sort of tongue-in-cheek, I put a quote here to show how building this community is starting. I have to admit that all of our family graduated from the University of Iowa, all right away. And recently they had Big Ten, I hope you know that, Big Ten tournament. And it has this wonderful, the best well-known women's basketball player, Clark is her name, Caitlin Clark. And the way they run the team is much the way this Lisa Bruder, who's the head coach, much the way that I think it was probably an example of the way that Addams was looking at creating a neighborhood with a team, the basketball team. The winning was because the women had this team effort, and that there was a history behind it. So we are, why I'm saying this is that we're learning the history of today, of what can build a neighborhood, a community, to deal in this moment of sorrow and death and destruction, to heal the world. You ask why wealth? I'm trying to, today we may have some sort of better idea of why wealth. All right, I hope so. Anyway, it took a while, didn't it? But so I know that we had previous introduction to the way that the women of Hull House and Addams looked at their neighborhood. Now, it's the nationalities there you can see in the wage map, which is very interesting, who's making what. But this is revolutionary. This is Addams' idea, and the Hull House women participated. That what they were doing was mapping the community, which was revolutionary, as I say. And the reason they were doing that was to understand what the community would need. they were not coming from above and saying, like many NGOs, okay, we're going to tell you, we're going to tell you what you need, right? So they took, for the first time really in the start of sociology became here, right here with Addams, because that's the first time that people have really brought science to a humanitarian effort. It's usually charity, right? It's usually, okay, we'll help these poor people. Certainly charity is wonderful. Not saying that it isn't, but the community decides, is part of that action. It's not given to, it's given with. It's not doing for, it's doing with. And the agenda that they set up was to experiment and what you would like to call democracy, which we haven't seen a whole lot of lately. But their agenda was to sort of characterize and get to know the people, what they need and want, and deliver this in a way that was more egalitarian and would transform their lives. Are there any questions right now? Okay. Here are some of the progenitors of sociology. Now, actually, I know there's three men, but nevertheless, Addams really should be up there. And the fact that she wasn't really considered a progenitor of sociology is because primarily she presented it. It was a sort of a feminization of social work. But she was the one with the idea before even W.E.B. Du Bois published his sociological magnum opus that he's known for. He's the gentleman on top, and many of you may know him, and he's the first Black man, as you see, trained at Harvard, and one of the founders of NAACP. And as you know, many of the Hull House women that we'll be seeing they were also very active in NAACP. Yes, he was a leader in the Pan-African movement. He was very much a friend of Addams. They thought quite a lot about how it is that not to make this a charity, not to be isolated from the community. He, of course, was emphasizing trying to get, for him, he wanted a separate, rather than, although he agreed with her a great deal on how she was presenting the sociological work she was doing, he still wanted the idea of Africa being the main, not the United States, but Africa. I remember when I went to Ghana in 2015 for our 100th anniversary, I sat down at his desk, and this is a brilliant man, and I much admired him. And then I looked through his papers, and he was quite bitter at the end, bitter particularly about the experiences he had with the bureaucracy who excluded people of color. I think he unfortunately died not thinking that he ever realized his dream. But his dream also was, I think, primarily seen through Addams' eyes and kept alive that way. William James, he's right down here. in the big mustache guy. He was first and foremost a person who is eminent, thought of as the leader of the pragmatist movement. He was the movement, as he saw it, was primarily as an educator, not as an action person as much, although his basic motive was in teaching was to get out into the neighborhoods, to understand that it's not just the ideals, it's not some vague ideal. You have to have hands-on work. And John Dewey was particularly a friend of James. Was a little bit of a well, I wouldn't say misogynist, but he was very condescending. But nevertheless, John Dewey saved the movement because of his close relationship with his dependents actually on Adams. So the words that you know now, the labels that you get for psychology began here with these people, with Adams, and they could not have done it without Hull House. Are there any questions there? Now we get to the heart of it, the action part. We are all familiar, of course, with Adams. I hope so. If not, you can ask questions later. Florence Kelley I chose this as sort of a random sample. Florence Kelley was one of the first chief factory inspectors in Chicago. And if you knew at that time, dealing with the immigration problems, with all of the industrial revolution occurring and really making women and children, sacrificing them for a profit. She was very active in the NAACP, and really the first person or woman really to get laws passed to protect workers and children. So you can see that already these women are making a big difference, but in a very practical way. That pragmatism is work behind your beliefs, and they're doing it in a very difficult time, but they have succeeded. Now the next woman is Dr. Alice Hamilton, and she too was very interested in the industrial impact to our immigration population. In particular, she was the first female, after she had stayed at Hull House as a resident. Now these people all lived, the three of the women, of course, lived in Hull House. This is one of the demands that Jane Addams put on anybody who was going to help with them. Anybody who wanted to be part of this process, any woman would work there and learn about the community and make a neighborhood. So that after she spent about 9 years at Hull House, she was the first female member of the Harvard faculty. Although she could not attend the faculty club meetings, she could not walk down the aisle in commencement, and most of all, she could not buy football tickets. So that's the idea. These are aspiring women who worked extremely hard, went to Harvard, and then, of course, were discriminated against. I don't know about the football tickets, but nevertheless, it wasn't an easy path, as you must know. Oh, sorry, I have to go back. Well, anyway, the next person in that, I don't know how to go backwards, actually. We couldn't figure that out yesterday. But it was a Mary Church Terrell, who was one of my favorite. She didn't live at Hull House, but she did also was involved deeply in NAACP. She was mostly, for me, she was a person who highlighted the Black women's clubs who helped with the suffrage movement. Now, of course, all of these were suffrage, working for suffrage, but she in particular was working with the women's clubs around the nation, the Black women's clubs, and they were very strong. And we're doing more research on. I and another person are doing more research on her in particular and the women's clubs. Frankly, because that's how I grew up in rural Iowa. We had these women's clubs that were very powerful, and I know that they have been very much overlooked in our literature, even for suffrage, or maybe even particularly. This woman, particularly Dr. Aileen Rice, I found her in my research, and I had not. Had any of you ever heard of her? Nobody?
No.
Okay.
No.
I hadn't either. And she was the first Black graduate from Wellesley, and received an MD. She worked at Hull House for a good many years, particularly during the World War I years. She couldn't be she got a doctor's degree, but she couldn't be employed as a physician. So she went to France and worked there for during World War I. And even the Red Cross wouldn't employ her to work over there. But she did, she was a leader of women, particularly Black women, being empowered. When she came back, she worked very strongly in trying to get more women into medical profession. She received them a Médaille d'Applaudissement Française in France. So she was recognized in France. But we're going to also do more research on her. So because she's very interesting and worked very, very diligently in trying to bring more women in, Black women into medicine. So onward. So we're bringing about what pragmatism meant, the theory and the action of it, about team building, really. And we'll go back to the idea of building this neighborhood as a team. They weren't specimens. They weren't for just your dissertation. They were not just for your education, those who are working there and living there. It is an experience. It is a reciprocal experience. And it is diverse. the particularly there that the community sets the agenda, what made it very unique. Hull House was particularly unique, even when Emma Green Bulch, if most of you know, she also won the Nobel Peace Prize and was a member of WILF. She set, I think in Denison in Boston, she set up a settlement house. And it was quite similar, but eventually turned into more of a charity. So the emblematic, I think, power of something like Hull House can be transformed into what we call a democratic experience, an experiment. And the idea that working together, building a community, is what WILF can do today. What we are trying to do. I know George, I mentioned, she mentioned something in one of our meetings that really struck me. It was living our values. So that imperative in this time of death and destruction can bring people in, can bring new members in, can say, you want to be effective, you want to work, you can do it on all levels. Internationally, nationally, branch, you can do it academically, you can do it politically with theory being in practice of it, in the praxis of democracy. You can do it hands-on by working in your community as an activist, so that we have all of those opportunities that we offer. The one way I think that you have a winning team is that you welcome the outsiders, sort of outsiders. You welcome new members. You offer all of these choices. Some people say it's too many choices, but I don't think so. So the idea that if you want to make that community and make a change, you want to live your values, which I think we're really, hopefully, working really hard and becoming more diverse. And it's a difficult task, but nevertheless, we can keep trying. And that's if I were doing a recruitment, and I use this slide part of it to recruit new members here in Albuquerque. I've got, well, the first time I'm going to be doing that is next week. So I hope this has given you some practical information about why we started, why we should continue, and why people should join. Now, are there any questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mary. That was great. Okay.
Can I stop sharing?
Yes, please, so we can see the hands or see people. But that was great. Thank you.
Certainly.
Yeah. Okay, well, I see one hand. Mary, do you want to take and go ahead with this?
I'm sorry, what?
You can go ahead and call on people. How about that? Okay.
All right. I'm going to call on George first because I quote her.
So Teresa has her hand up. I do have a comment, but I can go after her.
Okay, Teresa.
No, go ahead, George. You go ahead.
Okay, I will. So Mary H., that was good. A lot of what you shared there will fit with helping branches to increase their DEI skills, because some of those same principles that you shared in terms of how to build genuine community, making sure you're not descending on people with the answer, building community with accountability. All of those pieces will be included as we, at the Congress, work on taking on white supremacy within
Right.
Will and helping branches to lay the foundation. And you're right there that it's, you have to be working in your community with people who aren't like you to change conditions for that area of people.
Right.
So I might want to use some of your slides.
Well, you're welcome too. You're welcome
Thank
to.
you very much. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thanks, George. Teresa, you're next.
Well, thank you. This is a really stormy time, I think, in the
Yes.
life of Will. And when I think about the history of the 109 years, next year, very big year, the 110th anniversary, and talking with Jenny. What?
CC Anderson needs to mute. There's some noise coming from her little square.
Well, I did want to frame this. Membership recruitment is my life. I was a union organizer for
Right.
many years. So I got my training from powerful Service Employees International Union, whose local one is in Chicago. And as we work to rebuild.
Get that light out. Go back and get that light out on me.
I don't know how to mute her.
Okay.
Uh,
Go ahead, Teresa. Yes.
yeah, but the U.S. section of WILF is by far the largest section in the WILF international world. And to have that confirmed by Jenny Olin when I spoke with her for about 50 minutes on Tuesday morning, because WILF is going through a transformation, and George is going to be leading that work. But Diane and everyone, we do have two caucuses within the U.S. section. And I think it's important that in this final year of the UN decade for people of African descent, which calls for recognition, justice, development, and the United Nations, which WILF has always kind of seen as a partner since its beginning. But WILF was on the scene before the United Nations and before the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And WILF has to begin to really embrace the UN principles in the way that the UN decade for people of African descent has called for recognition. And the Black Liberation Caucus has been deemed illegitimate. Well, Jenny Olin confirmed on Tuesday that WILF International thinks it's great, as they clearly confirmed by having me and George speak at the Triannual Congress as part of the Black Liberation Caucus in July of 2022. So as we go through this process of Shilpa Jane doing the interviews in talking with us, WILF International is using the U.S. section because of what they deem disputes and conflicts, which I see no conflict. I see no dispute, not from my end. The Black Liberation Caucus exists, it's working, it's unstoppable. And so I just wanted to generate a conversation in the reality of what is going on in the US section right now. I remember, Mary, the last time you and I were talking, kind of one-on-one, it was about Melissa Torres, who is now on the international board. But her experience, Mary, I think it occurred maybe while you were president. And so in terms of what George is about to do with the DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion teams that will expand throughout, with the branches, I think we have to be completely honest and frank with each other about the history of the U.S. section of Will and why now more than ever we have to work on the anti-racism transformation. And I hope that doing my little presentation, so to speak, is in the way of a question. And it's not just on you, Mary, because I think there are 17 people in this meeting. And George did go first, and she kind of introduced the fact that she will be launching the DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion process at the Congress. So I think now is the time for people to speak about what they think about the transformation that is being launched with the initiative, really, of the Black Liberation Caucus. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. There's one thing I wanted to say too, I wanted to add, this is election time for us. There's, heaven only knows we got an election coming up for President of the United States. But we also have an election coming up for international president and for our own U.S. president. That's why, and it's on us, like you said, Teresa, it's on us to be informed. What do you want? Who do you want? What do you want? And I think they're going to send out, I think, had said the people who are sort of organizing our future a bit, a survey asking people. So be sure that we answer that survey, and because we need all of us to think how it is we want our neighborhood to look. D.
Hi, Mary. So I had a question about your presentation to do with, so Jane Addams was one of the founders of WILF, correct?
Oh, yeah, she was. Yes, yes.
So when I researched what I've read, she founded it with two members, two other people that were international. Do you know, can you tell us a little bit more about how WILF was founded with Jane Addams and the two other members?
Well, I'm not sure who you're referring to. I'm referring, my focus was Hull House, because that's the basic place. And she had another woman also with her. I think it was Emily Starr was her name, co-founder. So I'm not sure what you're referring to, but maybe we could talk later and you could clear it up for me.
Yeah, I've read, and I thought one was from like either Sweden or Norway, one of the Scandinavian countries.
Well, there's Rosa Schwimmer. Rosa Schwimmer this is an international person. Rosa would probably be one of them if you were thinking about joining together.
Okay, so
Um,
the chief,
but I'm thinking about very much earlier, you know,
the chief
that was the
observed
19.
in
I
the
was,
US, or was it an international? I thought that it was with 2 other women that were international, but that's the question I had was,
it would probably be Rosa if that's what you're thinking. Rosa Schwimmer. I don't know the other one. Sorry.
okay, thank you.
Sure. How are you doing, Dee, by the way?
Yeah.
Hey,
I'm not surprised.
thank you for coming and taking time. I really appreciate that.
Thank you for the wonderful presentation.
Well, I thank you for all your work. You know that I understand how hard it is. All right, thank you. Are there any more questions? Okay, thank you. I'm so sorry for the inconvenience at the first, but I've had a lot of problems with my bronchitis, so I'm a little scratchy, but I enjoy being with you, and I enjoy going out into the community here and talking about Wilf. It makes me very proud. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mary. I appreciate it. So we don't have many people left on the call. So I think I'm just going to open it up for anybody who wants to say anything. We have George had to leave and she's on the board. And I don't see anyone else who's on the board, but is there anyone else who has any comments to say about anything, Wilf related or ideally? So
Diane Janet Slaughter was our America's region rep. She's the highest ranking person, I think, in the meeting in terms of board members, because she's on the international board. And I
right.
would love
Yeah, international. Great. Janet, do you want to say something then?
Tell me what you would like me to talk about. That would be helpful.
in particular about the fact that the international put out the notice that the general secretary is really leaving, and we really and they were saying it sounded like a call for applications. So that you speak about Madeline Reese leaving, what that means, and how her replacement will be chosen. Thank you.
Yeah, oh, happy to do that. Some of this is still not quite fully decided. I can tell you what is decided. So yes, the ad went out yesterday, and I encourage anybody who thinks they would like to do this job to apply. It won't be an easy one. Madeline brought a lot of gifts, and not all of us agreed with her all of the time. But her deep experience with the UN was really, really helpful in moving Wilf along. I don't know what the Wilf budget, what Wilf income was like before Madeline became our Secretary General. But now International Wilf has had a budget of as much as 9 million Swiss francs, which is Swiss francs are worth about 10% more than American dollars are. So that's a pretty big budget. And not that long ago, say 25 years ago, there was a staff consisting of the Secretary General and one part-time clerical person. And now the staff is 50 people. So this is an enormous difference. The programming has also expanded under Madeline's direction. I'm going to say that I think one of the most difficult parts of replacing Madeline Reese is her deep knowledge of the UN. It is not a coincidence that Wilf's two main offices are in Geneva and in New York. That is the case because that's where the UN is, the two main offices of the UN. And most of the staff is in Geneva, although some are dispersed in other places. Some are in Africa. A couple are in South America. I'm not quite sure about Asia. Some are in North Africa and Middle East and North Africa. But most, I would say the majority of staff are in Geneva. And they do a lot of work lobbying the UN, helping craft policy statements, and pushing the UN and its members towards more humane, more peaceful policies. Like, for example, the work that Ray, I'm not going to remember her last name right away, somebody else.
Atchison?
Yeah, Ray Atchison. Ray with ICANN, the International, I don't know if it's Council Against Nuclear Weapons. They got passed. They pushed and pushed and got passed an agreement to sign on to oppose the use of and development of nuclear weapons. Now, of course, many countries haven't signed on, and that points to the limited scope and effectiveness of the UN. But nonetheless, there is a lot of good work that goes on lobbying the UN and doing that kind of work. Given that, and it's, I think, I'm going to say this, I could be proved wrong. I think that part of the success in building WILF's international budget has been because Madeline came to WILF after having been in the UN, so she already had made lots of connections, and was able to, well, you could say work them, but she knew how to, who to go to and how. And I think this is going to be a crucial skill if we think it's really important to have a big budget. It's going to be a crucial skill. And so I think we're going to need somebody with those kinds of either the kind of experience or the kind of connections that will keep that going. That said, International WILF, as is true of many NGO organizations, is under the gun. As all these countries, or at least their governments, are moving towards the right, funding for organizations like WILF is getting cut. And it's not just organizations like WILF. I was talking to the woman who directs my local rape crisis center. I'm on the board there. And she just got notice yesterday that their budget is being cut 45%. And this is going to be across the country. It's considered a non-essential social service to provide services to survivors of rape and domestic violence currently. This is going on across the world. So our biggest funder in International WILF is the Swedish aid agency. Well, Sweden went from having a very liberal center-left government to now having a right-wing government. And they're slashing all over the place. So we're losing at least 40% of our funding from, it's called SIDA, Swedish International Development Agency. And that was funding in the millions. So you're going to see retrenchment from International WILF. And there's still, and this is true in many organizations, they're still applying to see, can we make up for those funds somewhere else? So one of the big International WILF funders is an organization called the Oak Foundation, which is headquartered here in the US. You can investigate. I didn't get very far when I read their websites, but it'd be interesting to see what we could all turn up. Maybe Oak Foundation can kick in more money. But this increasing move towards the right and towards fascism in so many countries is really affecting the kind of work that organizations like WILF can do. So I think that's going to be a concern in international. It's a concern this year. Our budget, we know we have a shortfall of $500,000 to $1 million Swiss francs. But precisely what that's going to mean, we don't know yet. So the ad went out. Next steps are we have a meeting next week. We're forming we had the committee that drafted the job description. And then everybody on the board responded to that. I made a lot of responses to that. So the job description is done. The next thing is to select the selection committee, who will read all the files and then pick people to interview. I have tried to strongly argue for making those meetings open, so that anybody who is interested, and I know there won't be a lot of people, but anybody who really is interested could listen to the interviews. I'm getting a lot of pushback on that. But if you think it's worth it, I'll keep arguing. And then the question is going to be, well, once final or semifinalists are chosen, then what is that process going to look like? And I think, again, that anybody who is a member who is interested should be able to hear the interviews with the semifinalists. Well, you know, I don't know if I can make that fly or not. I have to say there are some people on the board who want to button down the procedure. And, you know, they're saying things like, oh, we can't have more than 5 people interviewing. And you could make rules that say, okay, only the people on the committee can ask questions, but you could allow people who aren't on the committee to submit questions, for example, right? Just in case that, you know, their concerns aren't being addressed. So there's that whole process going on. Well, so that's that. What else are you interested in?
The Congress, that International Congress, have you
You
heard
know,
anything?
yeah, somebody asked me that and I raised the question, but it was something we were supposed to talk about at our last international board meeting in March, but we ran out of time because we were talking about the budget and about the Secretary General, filling the Secretary General's position. We ran out of time. We didn't get to that. So that hasn't been decided.
Well, thank you. That was a great
it's
report.
upright.
Go ahead,
Sorry,
Teresa.
Teresa, you said something?
Yes, Janet. I just do want to say, Janet, knowing you from the first Congress and that rather stormy end to the Congress in 2022, when Madeline called for an investigation because of the internal squabbling inside of the international board, and being in the conversation with Jenny Olin, whose job title is membership manager. And what I said to Jenny in the 50 minutes that we spoke on Tuesday morning, May 14, is that members don't need to be managed. And so I said, you can manage the policies, the procedures, and all of that, but members deserve their democratic rights. And what you are doing, Janet, is advancing the democratic rights of members. And I love you for that, because I spent my whole work life advancing the democratic rights of union members. And so listening to you describing where the money comes from is really a challenge, because our work is to end wars and to fight for peace. And now that Sweden is a part of, I guess it is Sweden and Finland, who broke with hundreds of years of non-alignment with the war powers, is now a part of that. So in lots of ways, we have to understand that we're losing the fight against war, and how do we continue to advance our commitment to ending wars and making sure that what Lindsey Graham is recommending Israel do, drop nuclear weapons in Gaza. And so that's the world we're living in now. And where our money and our income comes from is important. We can no longer be dependent on the money from countries and nations, because countries and nations, as you alluded to, are moving towards fascism. And we cannot be taking money from countries that are going to be making war and supporting Israel in the way the United States and NATO will continue to do, because what's going on in Germany and in the German section, listening to Heidi talk about it. And I think we know what's been going on in the United States and in our section, and our inability to get the president to stand up to Israel. More and more weapons just got voted or authorized today to go to Israel to continue the genocide. So your report about where the money comes from is really significant. And I do hope that there's not any more silence in this conversation, because people need to understand that Madeline leaving and the fact that she worked to raise the kind of money she raised so that the staff is 50 people. We need to look forward to, and not so much in a happy way, but to the reality that there will be significant layoffs of people who are working in Geneva. You cannot sustain a staff of 50 people when you begin to lose 40% of your income and revenue. And so I think we need to get ready to face layoffs at the international level. And so I really want you to speak to that reality, Janet, because you're on the international board, and you know when the money gets cut in the way it gets cut, we're going to lose some of the services that are being provided by the International Secretariat. And right now, the Palestine Working Group is my major concern, because it is way too weak and lacking in participation. And we need the sections in the Americas to participate, because by far the U.S. section is the strongest participant in the Palestine Working Group. And in my opinion, it's because the International Secretariat, which is staffing this working group, is not doing the work it should be doing to engage the sections around the world. So we have no representation from Africa in the Palestine Working Group. And Sophie and Elof, who work for the International Secretariat, are really good people. And as Jenny pointed out, in the end, we're all just people. And the just people have to begin to understand how the work gets done. That has to involve the participation of the sections. And that is what's weak right now at the International Secretariat, is a clarity that the sections of elected leaders in the organization must be fully engaged. So Jan Quarterman, me, and George are committed to the Palestine Working Group, and to have only 7 or 8 people at those meetings and only 2 or 3 sections being represented. The majority of people in the meetings are staff, and you cannot function on staff when you're losing the kind of money that Wilf International is about to lose. I understand very clearly that bureaucracies that are being funded in the way that Wilf International Secretariat is being funded is going to cause a major problem for us when that funding goes away. And Madeline Reese leaving means that a lot of that funding is going to go away. And I think it's time for the international board to tell us the truth, particularly in the U.S. section, because we're the
If I
biggest.
can interject here, you know, I keep trying to learn the truth, and it's not easy. So, for example, we were given a budget that was very sketchy. I keep asking for and not getting a list of, okay, 50 people. So who are the people? What are their titles and what are their salaries? Madeline says, according to Swiss law, you cannot report a person's name with their salary. Okay. I said, does that apply to the board? Can the board not know that? Seems to me the board should be able to know, and we could be sworn to secrecy. That would be okay, right? I can't get an answer on that. And so I said, okay, how about if we get then the list of the positions and then the salaries? And then we need to know, what is it that everybody is doing, right? The people who have these positions, what is it that they do? That is seen as interference. I'm just going to tell you, by Madeline, that's seen as interference. Jeanette McLeod, who is our international treasurer, because I raised these questions, she said, would you like to work with me on explicating the budget better? And I said, okay, I'll do that. And she said, I think we need a third person. So at our last meeting on the budget, Madeline interjected and said, oh, I don't want to have a committee. I don't think we need a committee. It's too hard for people to understand. It would take us too long to explain to people who are not the treasurer, you know, how our finances work, what it all means. Now, it is not Madeline's position to tell the board what it can have a committee to do. I'm going to call Jeanette and ask her, you know, we don't have to take Madeline's. She shouldn't be interjecting herself there. That's not her role. So I want to suggest that we do that. It's been a problem, you know, this is my second stint on the board. It's been a problem the whole time, getting clear on personnel and what they do, and on the budget and what exactly it's dispersed for. So if you have projects on, for example, demilitarizing masculinity, of which there are several, what is it precisely that happens in each of those projects? Okay. I've only seen one report on that from one section, one country, and that was probably 4 years ago. I asked for, could you just send us, you know, these are grant funded positions and projects. Could you just send us, the board, the reports you send back to the funding agencies? And I was told, no, that's too much work. I said, all you have to do, you know, I'm sure you email the reports, just email them to the board too. Too much work for the staff. So I have felt shut down, and there are only a couple of people on the board who are supportive in when I ask, or me supporting of them when they ask similar questions. We are a minority on the board who asks these questions. So it's a little bit difficult. You know how it is. There are always a lot of documents to read. A lot of people just don't have the time or don't take the time to read them. And so when they come to meetings, you know, they're fine with going on whatever the Secretariat says they want to do or is doing. So democracy is a real issue in WILF at the international level. And I think that's why a lot of sections prefer to go their own way in terms of the kinds of projects they're doing. Because it's so hard to, you know, to get the information.
I'd like to speak to that, Janet, and actually I'd like to speak with you separately about the role of that was created during the last Congress that I'm in now, the International
Right.
Advisory.
Right.
A lot of what you're saying is ringing very true now to me from some of the observations that I have, but this is probably not the venue to have that discussion.
Sure.
And so I just wanted, I'm gonna take off. I've got a lot of work to do, but I wanted to mention to everyone else that if you haven't seen the e-alert today, the special member rate for the Congress has been extended through May 22nd. So it's the $55 rate is good through May 22nd. Then it goes up to the $75 rate that non-members pay. If you are experiencing any kind of difficulty, please be sure with paying, please be sure to message Dasa, who's assisting the same address that I put earlier. She's also assisting us with registration. So you can either message her or Chris Wolbeck, for relief if you need access to the Congress. Or you can message me and I will relay the message. But thank you very much for your work, Janet. You can go, back to that discussion, but I wanted to, note that I would like to speak with you at some point about that. And Mary, I've sent you an email about some revised documents if you can get to them. Thank you.
Okay, and we don't have any more time. I have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. And this has already gone on an hour and a half. So that's about the limit that I can take. So I just want to say thank you to everyone for attending and appreciate all who spoke and have a great month until we meet again. And Gloria McMillan's going to be the presenter at the next Jane Addams meeting. So thank you. Take care.
Well,
Bye.
Thank you. We love you so much, Diane, for opening up the Jane Addams Branch. These meetings are wonderful.
They are, I think. Okay. Thank you again. Okay, bye.
Good night. Good night.